Understood in Poland.
I'm located in Oslo.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It is a good start. And last but not least, hopefully I'm not missing anything this time, from Finland, we have Mr. Martin ANGEBY, Senior Advisor at the European Center of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats. Is that correct?
I work in Finland, yes.
Yes. Therefore, under this friendly auspices, we will start discussing today about the battlefield of societal resilience in the age of the full-scale hybrid warfare. This is a heavy topic at the end of the day, where we have been witnessing a lot of discussions about the military aspect, the military phase of the war. We also do acknowledge that the 21st century has fundamentally transformed the character of the conflict, and now we are witnessing more and more the fact that warfare is no longer limited to conventional military confrontation, as it increasingly unfolds across economic systems, digital networks, political institutions, information environments, and civilian societies. The ultimate objective is not merely territorial gain, but the erosion of social cohesion, institutional legitimacy, and democratic stability. Under these conditions, the full-scale hybrid warfare brings civilian targets as primary targets. So societal resilience has emerged as a central battlefield in this age of full-scale hybrid warfare. Critical infrastructure, public trust, healthcare systems, communication networks, educational institutions, and electoral processes are increasingly exposed to continuous disruption. Cyber attacks against critical infrastructure seek to disrupt governance capacities and create public uncertainty. In this environment, societal resilience has become both a strategic objective and a defensive necessity. Under this ground, after 4 years of war in Ukraine, we witnessed a strong demonstration not only of the extraordinary capacity for military resilience, but also an admirable determination across society to fight and endure. Under these circumstances, I would like to put the first question and open the discussion with Ms. Olga REZNIKOVA on how can Ukraine's experience be used at the European level, and what lessons we can learn from Ukrainian example. And without further introduction, I would like to continue and extend this question to Mr. ARAFAT. How can civil protection services benefit from the experience of their Ukrainian counterparts, and what lessons we are learning from their experience? Therefore, Ms. REZNIKOVA, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me there at this very important forum. Yes, Ukraine faces the full spectrum of threats, conventional military threats, hybrid threats, and generally existential threat to our state, society, and our democracy. But we are still alive. We are still fight with aggressor, and the question is, what is the roots of our state? Yes, definitely we are resilient, and what was important for this? People focus on preparedness a lot. But I would like to say that our state institution authorities were not prepared very well to respond to war, full-scale aggression. At the same time, our society was fully ready to resist aggressor, and it's something more than just preparedness of society. This is about motivation, why people stay and fight and not escape from a country. This is about motivation, patriotism, and also it's not only about motivation. This is what else helps us to survive in war time. It's our flexibility, creativity, adaptability to wartime conditions. This is a part of our DNA, so to say. You know, a lot of solutions were established not in advance as a plan, but it became a result of collaboration between civil society institutions, state authorities and local authorities and the businesses. You know, maybe such examples like a point of invincibility in Ukraine. So it was just a result of our creativity and adaptability to wartime conditions. And, you know, a lot of plans were not so effective that was expected. Actually, it is impossible to be prepared to every threat and crisis that can happen, especially in the face of uncertainty and hybrid threats that we face now. Yeah, experience of Ukraine is really unique and worth studying through the lens of resilience at national and societal level.
So, to continue to this, I would like to add that, first of all, the war in Ukraine has shown us that societal resilience is no more a theoretical concept, but a core component of national and European security. So we need to start looking at the individual as the basis of our resilience, but also the resilience has to take into consideration systems, institutions, and every concept we have which will guarantee that whatever the risk and the threat is, including war, we need to be ready to face it, and our population need to be ready to face this. So if we look at what we learned in the last period, is that we need to prepare better. So Romania went on certain endeavors. First, to create a better preparedness for mass casualties, a better preparedness for mass response, better information of the population. We created a portal very similar to what Sweden and some of, I think Norway has this also, to inform the population on how to behave, how to act, facing certain crises, certain disasters, and so on. The other thing we are doing is, for example, if we take the SAFE program, Romania is maybe the only, if not one of the very few countries that is allocating funds not only for the military, but also for the civilian side. So we have an amount of money which is allocated to the Ministry of Interior. Out of that, there is an amount of money which is around 900 million euros to the civil protection to prepare better our response to face major disasters, including, of course, the theory of conflict. And what we learned also is that the new way that Russia is leading its aggression is by not respecting any kind of international humanitarian law or Geneva Convention. And one of the targets we have seen is the health structure. And not only this, according to what we know from our Ukrainian colleagues, there are already hundreds of killed firemen, medical personnel in the field, and there were, according to the data we have at the Joint Health Group at NATO, already near to 3,000 attacks on health infrastructure. This means that our preparedness has to start looking different. We need to start understanding nothing is protected. We need to prepare. We need to have concepts to deal with the new situation. We need to do what is Germany doing now, looking at hospitals and the underground areas in the hospitals, how they can be used in case of a conflict. We need to start thinking of energy redundancy. We need to start thinking of redundancies, and various types of equipment. And to end, today we received a question from our Court of Auditors to ask us that we bought some equipment during the pandemic for negative pressure isolation, and they are asking us, why didn't you use them much, or something like this? And my answer to them will be the following, and I already asked my colleagues to write the answer. The same way the army has tanks, has rockets, has drones, and we all hope they will never use them, we as civil protection are entitled to have our equipment ready for disasters, for conflict, and we will hope never to use them. We must be prepared, we must have redundancies, we must have equipment that are not based on cost efficiency, but on efficacy and preparedness for response. And the last thing is, the whole society has to work together, from the individual to the community, to the public institutions and the private sector. And we just finished last week, in fact, the meeting with the private sector on building up resilience together. And I think this is very important also. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this first round of answers. Definitely we take from here the keyword resilience and adaptation, and also the concept of being prepared at the emergency situation for all kind of situation, not only the regular military ones, but also emergency situations, which may be perceived as dual use in the terms which we are using for the military capabilities. But here it is also a dual functioning, not a dual use of emergency situation structures. Still, Ukrainian resilience also meant the ability to maintain services even in heavily bombed cities. And that was a huge effort and a challenge, especially in services like healthcare system or education system. Interesting to hear is the Scandinavian model, which also provided a model of investment, significant investments in resources in preparing the population to cope with extreme situations. Therefore, we will move from Ukraine and Romania to Scandinavia. And I would like the two distinguished panelists, Mr. GODZIMIRSKI and Mr. ANGEBY, to follow this question and to give us an insight of the Scandinavian model for preparedness of the population.
Shall I start? Okay.
Yes, please.
I think that it's important to see this whole debate in a broader context, because, of course, the war in Ukraine is definitely a very important background for this discussion. But we also need to remember that before the war came, we had the period with COVID, which also somehow tested our society's ability to be resilient. So those two recent experiences are an important background for the measures that have been taken in various type of countries, including the country that I have been living in for the past 40 years, Norway. And Norway has had this whole society approach to the issue of resilience traditionally, because one of the cornerstones of the Norwegian security policy is the issue of the so-called total defense, meaning that in the case of a crisis, be it political but also military crisis, the whole society is supposed to take a part in this, in dealing with those challenges. And based on this idea, the issue of preparedness is definitely very high on the agenda. It's, of course, poses a number of problems, but over the past couple of years, for instance, there have been campaigns to make people more aware of what they need in order to survive a situation when the state is not going to be able to provide services that are important for a society to function. So the idea is that every family should have a stock of food and water to be able to survive for 7 days. the situation is even more complicated because we have also seen a situation where the whole technology has changed, meaning that, for instance, 99% of operations in Norway are paid electronically, meaning that the disappearance of the digital dimension of the state is going to have very huge implications for the whole society. So this makes the issue of preparedness and resilience a key issue. But it's also important to, if we were to somehow move to the next stage, and the next stage, according to the title of this panel, is to prepare for the full-scale hybrid war. When making preparations, when trying to improve the resilience, it's also very important to learn what kind of challenges we can expect to have to deal with in the future. And the future, at least according to the title of this presentation, is going to be even more complicated because we are going most probably to face measures adopted by not very friendly countries in order to undermine the ability of our societies to function in a normal way. I think that the maybe most important issue that I would like to share with you here is the question of the societal trust, because societal resilience is not possible without a very high level of societal trust. And I think that the Nordic, the Scandinavic experience is very relevant in this context because the Nordic societies are well known in at the global stage for having very high level of societal and also human trust. And this issue of trust is definitely something that we should invest more when trying to prepare for the next phase of the conflict after the end of this military hostilities in Ukraine, where we expect Russia and some other countries to embark on policies aimed at undermining our societies by also undermining the mutual trust, for instance.
Thank you. I work for the European Center of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats. It's a membership organization where countries are members, and all EU countries and all NATO countries are members. It was set up in 2017 to prepare the European countries for hybrid warfare. I mean, it was quite driven by the Crimea experience, realizing that there are lots of dark tactics being used. My particular job is to look at Ukraine and to draw lessons in resilience from Ukraine. So that's where I'm coming from. Just this winter, after the winter, I went through all the Ukrainian opinion polling, recent one, to see how is really the population affected by this situation that they're in. Just a factual thing, 1 out of 10 Ukrainians has had to relocate from their home because of shortages in electricity, heating, or water. So that is like something that happens to a lot of people. I mean, many more people have suffered from shortages, but actually 1 in 10 had to move. On the other hand, if you ask the questions, I am generally a happy person, and we have tracked that variable for many years. People are actually happier in February 2026 than they were 3 years ago, for instance. So the personal feeling of satisfaction is not always affected by very harsh conditions. Thirdly, if you ask Ukrainians what is the most important problems facing our country, the war is number 1, bombs, people dying, and so on. Number 3 is shortages in energy, water, etc. Number 2, corruption. So this signifies one thing that you were talking about, trust. It's very detrimental to trust, of course, but on the other hand, fixing your problems is in your own hands because nobody else is making you, making your systems corrupt. You have it in your own hands. So hybrid threats are very broad, and if you look at Ukraine, you also have the kinetic threats. I mean, the actual bombs and missiles. But other than that, you have cyber. The main categories would be cyber, sabotage, information manipulation, and economic coercion. When we try to draw lessons from Ukraine, of course, you cannot look past the missiles. So that's the main thing. And you cannot look past energy. Among all critical systems in society, energy is really number one, and that's a realization. And when you have EU directives pointing to 10 different critical infrastructures, and you have 7 NATO baseline criteria for resilience, actually there is one baseline criteria, and it's energy, and then you have another ones that are also important. So I think this is very important. Some trends when it comes to sabotage that I've heard recently, and that we're also struggling with in Europe. One is recruitment on social media. You can recruit vulnerable groups to do small things for you, transport a package to start with, take pictures of something, and then to start carrying maybe explosives and so on, sometimes unbeknownst to the person who's carrying it. It's a dark tactic used by the Russian side in Ukraine, and the Ukrainians are very worried about it. But it's also one thing that's used by criminal networks in Europe more and more, and by the Russians in Europe. For instance, they had some immigrants, Moldovan nationality, going around Paris, painting swastikas on the walls. And these are hybrid tactics that we should be very aware of. So we're going to draw some lessons on this, and I will also come to the Nordic model. But firstly, of course, we have to understand the goals of the adversary, and our goals should be the opposite. The adversary wants to incur costs with us. It wants us to focus on the wrong things, on problems that they have generated for us, instead of focusing on what they're doing. They are actively trying to undermine the trust of people in the governments, because that make the government, it's difficult for the government to act. And that's where a thing like corruption, which we can control ourselves, of course, we should control. Although when there is a problem, of course, it will always be exacerbated by information campaigns by the adversary. They use the situation. At the critical juncture, they want to be able to paralyze us, and that is really when we come to a very difficult situation. Another important lesson, I would say, and that the Ukrainian tell me about, is that, well, we should have started yesterday. There's lots of legal obstacles to being fast in countering hybrid threats. So you have to, Ukraine has passed, I don't know, 10, 20 new laws in order to be able to reconstruct and to counteract, etc. Those laws should be passed already, and they should be put in the speedy part of the system. And now, we talk about the Nordic total defense models as something good, but these models have not been tested in a sharp situation. Ukraine did not have a total defense model, but it has been tested. And I think that we should actually look more at Ukrainian experience than looking at Nordic experience. Just because they exist and they're elaborate and they are documented, it doesn't mean that they are the models that we'll use. Actually, what we have seen is that there is no default to action in those models, because it's felt everybody in the system feels that the system will take care of it, and there is no individual incentive for action. We have seen it. We have had some problems. We had rivers flowing over, or forest fires, and so on. And we see that the system is not all that great. It's great in a conference room, but it's not great in practice. And I think that the self-organizing system, where people actually have incentives to take action, can be just as good, or if you infuse more the default to action within the European systems. Maybe I'm talking too long. Yeah.
Well, that was very interesting. It is a pity.
I'll try to wrap up. I think that actually we have a lot to learn from Ukraine, and now only on the issue of critical infrastructure and cyber attacks. There are two different European directives. One is the Critical Entities Resilience Directive, and another one is the NIS2, the Network and Information Systems Directive, which deals with cyber. They both deal with very critical systems in our societies. Now, in the European Commission, these are two different directorates, But in Ukraine, they are put under the same service, the state service or the special service for strategic communication and information protection. And that makes sense because they deal with the same things. And actually from the cyber people, you can learn lots of systematic approaches that are also good for the critical infrastructure protections. There are 7 European countries that are presently being taken to court because they have not implemented the critical entities directive. France, Poland, and Sweden are 3 of those countries. And I think that if there is anything that's the main message here is that we have to actually work much harder and be much better prepared. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it was a very elaborated answer on the model which is built on in Scandinavian countries, viewing the experiences in Ukraine. Still, we do not need necessarily and hopefully to test those models, but being prepared is essential. And moving from a Scandinavian part to continental Europe, we are looking to hear about the German view on this perspective of hybrid threats. How do you feel, Mr. Thiele? Is Europe ready to cope with these hybrid threats as exemplified here before?
Yeah, thank you very much also for the invitation. Well, I can link up to my previous speaker. When Germany was one of the key founders of this Center of Excellence in Helsinki, very engaged, and actually I had the privilege to run a 2-year studies, 17 to 2019, on hybrid warfare, future and technologies. And what we found in principle that all those things that have been mentioned here matter: people, trust, government taking care of its citizen, and the holistic approach that the Scandinavian countries actually have about. Now, Europe, well, 50 years ago, I was a great enthusiast of the European Union and idea already. Europe is a peace project. This is of importance in such very some times as we have here, because when Europe was founded, more or less, it was about getting this war-torn continent back to peace track. As a result, the European Union is not very experienced in dealing with war and its effects. It means there is a clear lack of experts, and we do hard actually to get forward with what we're doing, and I think we need to learn from that. In principle, when I look at Ukraine, very important, you mentioned corruption. Of course, it's important that people trust their governments, and the less they trust it, they look for a kind of horizontal trust building where Ukraine is excellent. And this is clearly something that we could learn about, how people build trust in each other and overcome hurdles and stress and shock situations that they are dealing with, an important thing. Another thing, I mentioned technology also. Ukraine is unique in coming up with agile innovation, also built on technology. And when you heard that many threats come through social media, for example, information as a weapon, then you can see all of this doesn't work without accepting that technology is a point, something that you have to deal with, that you have to come forward with. In principle, Western Europe, so we're actually when I talk about EU, I mean particularly Western Europe, learning from Ukraine and also learning from the Scandinavian countries. Finland has excelled in keeping Russia away enormously, although how much citizen it gets involved to show preparation and resilience, how organized you actually are, preparation. Many forget that resilience is a kind of muscle that you have to train, that you have to equip, that you have to organize and prepare for. So this is certainly a particularly important thing. And when I now listen also to the other panels that I had the privilege to learn from this conference, there are 2 key ingredients that we have not looked at and that we need to look at in these difficult times where we are not so sure how close our American allies will stay with us. First of all, situational awareness. It came again and again, and it not just affects war situations, but it also affects hybrid campaigns, hybrid threats. We must understand what happens in space, in social media, in our societies, vis-à-vis our industry and critical infrastructure. So it's very important to collect knowledge, to censor knowledge, and to share knowledge on these things, in particular also in a broader format, which would include Ukraine, of course, because you are taking first-hand experiences. By the way, it also very much applies to the Baltics that have that hybrid campaigns on any given day. And well, it took a long time for Germany, for example. It's just 2 months ago that the president of the protection of our constitution acknowledged how much hybrid threats we face today in Germany. We would not have thought that for a long time. And I even recall Mark Rutte when he took office, where he was questioning in his first weeks whether there is at all something like a hybrid threat. Now, this was how he started office. So it's not so very long ago. So we have to do something about it. We have to build a situational awareness capacity, and this involves technology. And there's another point. When I on a trip to Japan, actually, the Japanese asked our delegation why we would build all our information and communication on Chinese or American systems. This is a time to build an own environment. And when I look to Scandinavia, Nokia, Ericsson, clearly leading companies, global leading companies in 5G, 6G capacities, and this is our backbone actually. Through these communication networks, our knowledge, our intellectual properties go, and others can steal them if they want, particularly as AI and quantum technologies came about. So we have to make ourselves more sovereign, more autonomous, not against, for example, the US, no, not at all, but a degree of autonomy also requires a technology and information and communication technology backbone. And these two things is what I would propose, asking for Europe. Europe needs to get better. It needs to learn from the bridges from Scandinavia and Ukraine, and it has to get its act together on its technology, because it has the technologies, it has the people. It needs to do something about that.
Thank you so much. As Mr. Arafat is about to leave to an important meeting, I will take the chance to question him first at this next round. Starting from the point of information, the emergency department is maybe one of the most communicational institutions in Romania. You are under pressure always, and information flows around every step our emergency situation is dealing with. Therefore, from your experience in this information battlefield, which is putting a high pressure on you, how do you appreciate that these information narratives have affected your efficiency and your interventions? You have such a huge experience, and then we will also go back to Ukraine, but starting with you first, Mr. Arafat.
I will underline that we are amongst the most communicative and most attacked entities, and this is because the population has confidence in us. I mean, if we take some of our institutions that we coordinate, like the General Inspectorate for Emergency Situations, the Fire Service, and so on, they have a confidence rate of nearly 90%. So we become a target for that. So this is one, and we know that. The other issue is how we were impacted during disaster response. And we see how emergencies are turned against us and how we are attacked. We had this during our major fire disaster. We had this during the pandemic, and I will stop at the pandemic for a while. The pandemic, it showed us that the disinformation didn't come only from social media. Romania was one of the countries where disinformation and manipulation came also through mainstream TV channels. We had time which was given to influencers, fashion designer, actors, singers, to say their opinion more than the experts and to be supported on certain TV channels. What happened is, in the fourth wave, where we had 20,500 and something deaths in exactly 2 months, it was the Delta wave, 90%, 85 to 90% of the deaths were unvaccinated, were victims of disinformation. So yes, disinformation can kill. Disinformation needs to be tackled, and we need to be ready to answer. We need to go into this battle and answer, but the best thing is that we need to prepare the population before. And this is where I go to the Nordic countries where they do train their children on how to appraise information on the internet and so on. And we need to do this in our schools. We need to teach the population, at least when they are looking at information, to see what is its origin, where is it coming from, is it true, it's not true, and so on. So I think that this is the most important thing that we take as a lesson from the pandemic and from other emergencies. And this is where we need to partner also with the media. Me saying that certain TV channels did the misinformation, it doesn't mean it is a general issue. So we need to partner with the media, which is ready to pass the message and to pass the, let's say, the official message, and then the population can compare and believe what they want to believe. But we had deaths because of misinformation, and this is very serious, I would say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing this, this experience, and thank you for being with us today. I will turn to Ms. REZNIKOVA. I think the disinformation narratives and these social media campaigns have affected, have been present in the war in Ukraine. Still, you were talking with high appreciation of the solidarity of the people, of the motivation, which shows that these narratives were not successful in Ukraine. Sometimes in some countries in Europe, we see more effects of these narratives than to you. So if you are so kind, just share with us how your solidarity works in rejecting this narratives.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we are fed up with disinformation, and actually our people can understand who we are and what is disinformation is. And actually part of these, I would say, wrong narratives is narratives about Ukraine as the most corrupted country in the world. This is not true. And, you know, if our society had no trust to our authorities, it could be impossible to fight during five years against Russian aggression. Actually, we know this problem, this issue with corruption. We discuss these issues openly. That's why sometimes it seems that corruption is the most important problem in our society. This is not true. And if you ask, for example, Russians about corruption, they maybe don't know about corruption in their country nothing, because this problem is hidden. It's not discussing a part of discussion in the society. Actually, our society are open, and we are decisive and brave enough, not only with our enemy at the battlefield, but only we are decisive to fight with enemy on the hybrid battlefield, such as disinformation and the creation of wrong, or how to say, create a wrong environment, alternative history, alternative environment for some people who are ready to accept this disinformation. And actually, I would like to add that society and their leadership must be brave and decisive enough, not only in their mind and in their words, but in their action, actually. You can see that actually coming back to this problem with corruption, we fight with corruption every day. And actually today we can see a new round of this fight at the lowest level, but we are doing this openly. We don't hide this problem. What is this important for our society and what makes us different from, for example, Russian society?
Well, thank you. I think we will come to the last round, and hopefully we will be given some extra time, which I think it's very much needed. At this stage, I think there is no border for manipulation, disinformation, and providing these narratives in all Europe. Is not any border left for this kind of hybrid threat. How do you perceive in Europe the fight with these narratives? How European states or European Union as a whole should counter foreign manipulation, which we see in some cases has proved to have some efficiency in some political decisions in some member states. We will not nominate any at this stage. So, Mr. GODZIMIRSKI?
I think what is very clear is that those issues need to be addressed not only at the state level but at the international level. And here I think that we have two international organizations that are well prepared to meet this challenge. NATO is definitely the institution that is to deal with the issues related mostly to the kinetic warfare and kinetic operations, but the European Union on the other hand is much better prepared to address all other issues related to possible hybrid actions targeting societies in Europe, but also in Ukraine, because the European Union has a number of instruments and institutional solutions that can be very useful in organizing this cooperation on issues of greatest importance. And as one of the examples, my Finnish colleague mentioned that without energy, nothing is going to happen in society. And coming from Norway, Norway is not a member of the European Union, but Norway is a member of NATO, but Norway has also another important role in Europe because Norway is one of the key providers of energy to European societies. And this really illustrates how the issue of protection of critical infrastructure, for instance, is something that needs to be addressed not only at the national level, but at the international level, because any damage done to the Norwegian energy installations will have immediate implications for European societies that depend on having energy being supplied by Norway. So this is a very good illustration of the need to have this overall approach to the issue of protection of critical infrastructure, which is definitely one of the key aspects of national and international resilience. So this is my message. Make our institutions that we are member of, or those to which we somehow inspire to be members of, to be deeply involved in this work on issues related to societal resilience and protection of critical infrastructure. That is the key element of this space needed in order to secure societal functioning, in a sense.
Yeah. Now, yeah, this is the information aspect is I would say the most important one, and of course it has very strong political dimensions. We have very strong mechanisms at the European level, as the Digital Service Act, etc. The Democracy Shield is coming. But we shouldn't pretend that they're not controversial. I mean, this is a main point of contestation between the United States and Europe at the moment, the freedom of speech and to express all of these things that we consider disinformation, but for somebody else is information. If you say that the government of any country is corrupt, it's an opinion. I mean, yeah, maybe compared to how it used to be 20 years ago or whatever. So you cannot say it's true or false. I think it's really important that there's a new imperative for government agencies and the government in general to apply strategic communication, to communicate proactively. And this is because if there is this information out, then if you're not communicating, you're leaving a vacuum. And if you use old methods, writing a press release, expecting that legacy media will read that release and then tell people what the government is doing, it's not working anymore. You have to use the right channels to meet people. You have to, if people are on TikTok, well, sorry, you have to go there. The same with Telegram. You have to be abundant. It's not enough that, oh, but we talked about that last week. No, you have to talk about it all the time. You have to repeat the message because the adversary is repeating their message over and over against European decadence and whatever it is. So you have to prove the opposite all the time. You shouldn't respond to their narratives, but you should sell your own truth. And yeah, you have to be repetitive. When we're talking about the Nordic countries and a trust society, well, there is a detriment to that because there is no effective campaign legislation in the Nordic countries, or at least not in my country. Actually, I'm Swedish. I work in Finland. So no, there is no spending cap in political processes, and there is no regulation of non-contending actors participating in elections. And so basically you could set up what would be equivalent to a super PAC, campaign very hard against the government or for a government, and it would be completely legal. And you couldn't stop it like was done here in Romania. And I think this is it's a weakness in Sweden. People, just because a country is rich and they have institutions, it doesn't mean that those institutions are effective. So Sweden started an agency, National Agency for Psychological Defense, and we have elections in September, and they issue a handbook for people to understand this information. Now the people who are vulnerable to this information are not going to pick up a handbook from a printed handbook from a government agency. They should be on TikTok doing this. So it's really trying to bring a butter knife to a sword fight. I think that the one institution that I've seen that I commend is a Vignium in France that actually goes after foreign manipulation. But there is not much of it in Europe, and I think that much more people have to look at that example. Thank you.
The last intervention of Mr. Thiele gives me the opportunity to ask an experienced military expert and to connect with information warfare. Now the cognitive and psychological dimension of the conflict have become a strategically significant part of the military capabilities in a broad sense. What is your view about including this information warfare in the spectrum of military operations?
This is a real interesting question. All of us are victims of micro-targeting. Amazon does, I could now name plenty of others, they do. They study our habits, they study our interests, they even study our looks, to which products are we looking at when they come to, and this allows to address groups or individuals. Actually, in the military, we've just seen that in Venezuela. There are always things you see, ships, bombs, kinetic things, but there are also many things you don't see. In Venezuela, key groups of the society were targeted along with the attack and were told how they better would behave. China does that with its citizens as a standard, and we should not be surprised if they also do it with us as we try to do business with them along the value chain. So my sensing, unfortunately, is that what should I say, warfare moves from the military realm increasingly, not exclusively, into the civilian realm. And of course, information warfare will be used, and not just by Russia, China, or Iran. We have seen Cambridge Analytica supporting the US president in his first term in the election. So actually, Gerasimov, when he came up with this concept of hybrid warfare, had studied the Arab Spring and what Western nations have done there to learn from there. So this is coming to us, and so we need to get better in dealing with that. And I would say in a sandwich format. So sandwich means top-down, means entities like EU and NATO need to do their job as required, but also looking bottom-up, looking at my experience with the media that I have excessively, more or less. I can tell you the newspapers, and you know that yourself, are getting thinner and thinner. The mainstream TV formats are running out. We have more and more an individual approach to information, to entertainment, etc. And we must meet our people where they are. Means, in principle, although all these providers of information entertainment must have an understanding how information warfare, how hybrid aspects work, and what their responsibility is in this. And the good news, in principle, when I look particularly at the TV stations, also the commercial private ones, they're getting better. They're hiring individuals that are looking at that issue. They are trying to find ways how to communicate. It's not so easy because you cannot see it. So it's so difficult to grasp. But we are getting forward. But it is a challenging future, like all mankind development actually has been. So we should not resign now or get, what should I say, depressive. No, it's a challenge, but we have to meet it.
Thank you so much. This is the advantage of being last. We were giving some extra time, and hopefully you enjoyed this last part of the conversation. I think that was a vivid discussion. And I think before leaving, we can conclude on this at this stage that the future security of states and democratic systems will depend on their ability to cultivate resilient institutions, informed citizens, secure digital ecosystems, and cohesion of social structures capable of withstanding the multinational and multidimensional pressure of hybrid warfare. In this note, I want to thank all the panelists, distinguished audience, and close here our panel discussion, and invite you to join us for a further conversation. At the first floor, it is a dinner buffet, which is waiting for you. And we will therefore continue our pleasant conversation. Thank you so much, distinguished guests. Thank you so much, your audience. Thank you.